during the Luka postgame, but go ahead. Sorry.
It is true, Wow.
As you were.
Anything more Luka would have
Thank
done.
you. Yes, of course, there's more he could have done. So both of this is vintage, arrogant me. I apologize. Everything I'm saying here is the right opinion. Okay?
Okay. Pencil.
Using this playoff run as a negative on Luka's ledger is an absurdity and shows a lack of understanding of basketball.
Okay.
And if you do it, I'm really going to have a hard time taking your opinions on other basketball things seriously.
Is that out there?
Yes, 100%. But I don't want to.
Okay.
So
Wow.
that is true. Here's what's also true. They needed A+ Luka. They got B- B Luka, and it wasn't enough. Now, if he had been A+, they might have still lost. You know what I mean? Maybe they speak as Kyrie, and we'll get into that, the other guys. But Luka needed to be as good as he can be, which is 35 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists, you know, a spoon-feeding guys alley-oops,
Yep.
all of it. And instead, he was good, really good, great for mortal standards, good for legend of the NBA standards, right?
He was good.
And that wasn't good enough. And so, do I think he's in perfect shape? No. Do I think part of that, do I think it's exacerbated by the injury? I do, but he's not using an excuse. I won't either. Are there things he can learn from? Yes. But for those of us who think he can be a top 10 all-time player, this year was part of that trajectory. Being at 25, making the finals, having a great playoff run, all of that. So, yes, he should have been better. Mm-hmm. He was also exhausted a bit by carrying them there. And even if he was better, it might not have been enough. And so that, to me, is the right opinion on this.
He definitely could have been better. And just a couple quick things before I really get into it. He shot 59% from the foul line.
Yeah.
And
bad from three.
Right. You're a great shooter.
Yeah.
You're a guard. You got to do better than that. From three, like you said, 24%. Now, I think we know Dallas was a good defensive team too. Both teams played great defense.
Yep.
You were talking about the Celtics offense and their, that 5-game stretch. That credit Dallas's defense, and like nobody really shot that well, or the main guys for the Celtics. So he could have done better in those two areas. Obviously, game 3, who knows? They're down 3 when he fouls out.
Sure.
And some of that you can even, I'm not making an excuse for him, you can look at the rest. You never see superstars fouling out of really games, let alone finals games. All right, and I get it. But
you certainly don't see him get 4
you
fourth-quarter
get
fouls.
Exactly.
If they
there's
foul out, it's
always
usually
some
because
contact.
they have 4. They're already at 4 fouls early in the
I
third.
know, but a lot of times, a lot of times the superstar knows that, so they don't pick up all those fouls.
No, that's fair
true too.
But all right, so here's some things he's got to do, because I said early at some point in the series when it looked like they were going to lose, he needs to take this and look in the mirror and say, okay, this is where I can improve. One, obviously, he's got to stop complaining to the refs so much. I think that deflates your teammates. All right, stop on that. Of course, occasionally this or that, but stop. He's the number 1 in the league in that.
Can I ask you
he's not a
dig into that for a second? Because I put this out as a joke on social media, and I was like,
it's hard to tell when you're joking on social media. I was like, is that a real take or a joke? Yeah, go ahead.
Do you buy that certain players can play cool, calm, and collected, and that's when they're at their best, and certain guys need a fire inside of them?
That's what we say about Draymond.
Yeah. Like Draymond, if Draymond was
close
cool,
to
calm,
as
and
good
collected,
as Luka.
he wouldn't be as good.
Yeah, but that's because he doesn't have the skills that Luka
But when Luka is fire-breathing Luka, and I know you use it as like NBA Jam fire, but also just like mad at the opponent, mad at the fans, mad at the refs, that maybe he needs that.
Go at the fans, go at the opponent. Don't go at the refs. I mean, like go at the refs.
I mean, that honestly
if
is a
you
fair
want to
point.
stay on fire,
Sure. Okay.
Secondly, more effort on defense. And we've seen at times he can actually stay in front of people. But he should look and say, okay, Michael, Kobe, LeBron, they were two-way players. And he's not going to be like them defensively, but you can put forth the effort. That'll help your team, because when they see the best player doing it, they're going to chime in. And he could be like Curry.
He should be like
Curry,
Steph.
just being in the right place, talking, and making sure you're not hurting the team. So that, secondly.
That's right.
And obviously getting better shape for that so you can play both ways. And here's something, and I went against 2 kind of historical basketball facts that I've often stated, but I went against them in these playoffs and I got burnt both times. One was Minnesota when I've always said, you're too young. You're not going from no deep playoff runs to all of a sudden winning the championship.
Yeah.
But when they beat Denver, I kind of made that leap. So I overlooked that. That was wrong. The second thing is, look, the heliocentric style of play. No one's won that way. Oscar Robertson, Wilt Chamberlain, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, James Harden. No one's won a championship. Now, they came close, but the way they came close, Luka is pretty comfortably in the lead for all-time usage rate. Jordan's second with 33. Luka's at 35.7. All right, so he's got a nice little lead on that.
You don't think that's how the Cavs in 16 won? The same way?
No, I don't. I think because Kyrie was a huge part.
Yep.
And so I'm saying Luka has to allow, like in the playoffs when they ran through the West, his usage rate dropped to an all-time low for him, 31. And then during the finals, it went back up to 39 almost. So they played differently during the final. Luka doesn't look like he can really play differently. But I don't know if they can win this way. I thought they could. I overlooked that and thought Kyrie helping them would be enough. But again, they played differently in the finals than they did in the conference playoffs.
That to me is, and there's no way to prove
He's
it.
got to share the ball a little more.
Yeah, but in my opinion, that's a chicken and egg factor. Because the fact that he was doing it in the first 3 rounds, I think it shows he's able and willing.
But
and
the
usage rate is what
Okay.
I'm saying.
Right.
And then in the finals, when Kyrie is struggling, when the role players, except for really P.J. Washington, for the most of it looked not ready, and I don't blame them. They're role players. They're young. It's their first time. I think then it's like, all right, I've got to do it. And what really hurt him on top of that was he wasn't hitting his threes. You know what I mean? So he's like, I've got to do it, and he shot too many. The threes weren't going in. So I thought the first 3 rounds showed, I'm willing to play another way as long as it's working. But I think his go-to, if things aren't working, is, well, I trust myself, which is reasonable.
No, I get that.
And that's the point I was making about the 16 Cavs. Because LeBron's the same way. But the difference is in 16, Kyrie in those finals was excellent throughout.
And they weren't as heliocentric.
Right, but correct.
So if Kyrie steps
up, and if they have their own version of J.R. Smith in this series, then all of a sudden,
because they did play a little differently. Once they got their team together midway through the season, he played a little different. Yeah. But they have to. That's how they have to play to win.
Go ahead.
Question. In the last block, we talked about the Celtics as the Pistons. It is a proof of concept that we can beat me, let's say.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is a mark against Luka, that for the last few finals, Joker, Steph, Giannis, LeBron, Kawhi, Steph, you can debate, Durant, LeBron, back and forth, that the best guy usually wins? Do you think it's a mark against him now that he failed?
I think it would have been if he had the numbers Tatum had. If it was like, he didn't show up, or if he had failed and Kyrie had played really well. It's like, maybe he wasn't quite so good. But this, to me, is more similar to, not at the same level, but 18, when LeBron played outstanding and they got swept, or 17 he had Kyrie, 18 he had nobody. Because here are the numbers for the series, both teams. And this is the point I was making. There's Luka's rank amongst both teams for the series, and that field goal percentage thing is crazy. He had the second best field goal percentage in the series.
Who's number 1?
I think Drew.
Okay.
Which amongst guys
shoot half as much as
and amongst guys who took at least 5 or 6 shots a game. And then for the playoffs, this was my original point. It's now him and Joker is the only people to lead the postseason in points, rebounds, assists. Now, Bruce's point that that's circumstantial at times based on how many games you play, all of that.
But it's legit.
It's legit, and it was a big deal when Joker did it. So it's not as big of a deal because it ended in a title and because now someone's done it. So that's the defense of him, I think, is a pretty fair one. And I also think this is where the age does come in, which is it's more worrisome if he's 29. If he's 29, it's like, you've had this many opportunities. I look at this as the first team he's been on that was good enough to be in the room for a championship. And they got in the room.